Before I begin, I want to remind you that I've set out to review every American superhero movie ever made. This qualifies, so I'm reviewing it. Now, I can't hold every movie to the same standards, but I do hold every movie to standards of some kind. No one expects a movie with Power Rangers in the title to change hearts and minds. No one expects an especially clever plot, or anything, really. We don't even really expect to be able to tell the Power Rangers apart if we're not kids who've been watching the show. If you saw the first one and you remember that Tommy was the really popular one, you might kind of wonder why he's wearing red this time instead of white. Power Rangers is for kids, and if we don't mind all the fighting, we're okay with this. We expect teenagers in colorful costumes fighting monsters that grow, and then fighting them again with big robots called Zords. And based on the title, we should reasonably expect that in this one, there's going to be some kind of race car theme, and then it'll be, a movie. Okay, you ready for this? If you haven't seen it, this is going to totally blow your mind. I'll wait in case for some reason you're not sitting down or you're taking a swig of Coke or something. You ready? Okay. All the things I just mentioned, all those things you'd expect from a Power Rangers movie, Turbo fails at all of them. So if we have to lower our standards for a film to enjoy a Power Rangers movie, what does it need to do to at least be a good Power Rangers movie? If it isn't going to have good characterization or much of a story, what does it have to fall back on? Colorful costumes and action. This movie is only an hour and a half long. With the exception of Catherine briefly morphing, which we see at a distance, by the way, in the jungle to break her fall into water, the Rangers don't actually morph until 37 minutes into the movie. And that's only to show off their new turbo outfits, not to actually fight any monsters or anything. It's that same sequence you always see when it's time for parents to buy their kids new Power Rangers stuff. Zordon's ritual of announcing all the cool new toys, which in this case really isn't all that cool at all, especially if you saw the previous movie where they actually spent a little money and tried to make it look better than the TV show. So when do the Power Rangers finally have, a full morphing sequence where they then fight in their superhero costumes like you see in the show every week? 25 minutes before the movie's over. That's right. The climactic battle is also nearly the only battle. So you'd figure there'd be this big race car theme. There's not. It actually feels a lot more like it's pirate-themed. The villain, Divatox, lives at sea, and the Rangers have to take a big ghost-looking ship to get to the mystical island to stop Divatox from marrying the big lava monster. I have no idea why Carzords are the only thing that could stop an evil submarine captain and a lava monster, and it's not like they've lost their powers like they did in the previous movie. The Zeo powers they're currently using work just fine. I have no idea why they couldn't just take those Zords to the island. And with turbo powers, wouldn't you figure they'd maybe use those Zords to, get around? They're not giant robots like Zords usually are. Literally, they're just cars. And toward the end, when they finally do something with them, the cars themselves have to grow so they can become big enough to come together into a Megazord. And the one time one of these Carzords is actually used to travel any real distance at all, it's over water. Really. And then there's the scene where the Rangers are running instead of using their new vehicles to cover ground, and one of them actually feels the need to say, "This sure beats walking." The biggest insult is that it's not even trying to be cinematic. It looks like it's made mostly on a TV budget. It tries to dupe us into thinking it isn't just a long and boring episode of the TV show by doing a lot of location shooting. And either most of the budget went toward the pirate ship set, or they borrowed it from someone, because it looks like Power Rangers always looked on Saturday morning. Imagine this on the big screen. I don't have to imagine it. I was there. Yes, I was still watching Power Rangers when this movie came out. Yes, I went to the theater to see it. And yes, even for me, this was the beginning of the end of my waning interest in the series when I was a kid. It wasn't just because I was getting older either. This movie was just cashing in on the success of Power Rangers the movie. Saban probably figured after that they could just slap anything together, put it in the theater, and kids would rush their parents out to see it. So instead of putting together a movie, they made a long first episode to their new season. Unlike the first movie, which isn't canon with the rest of Power Rangers continuity, this is just set up for the season to come, such as it was. And in fact, if memory serves, the first episode of the season was just a clip show of scenes from this movie. New sets and costumes and Zords were made here that would be used all season long. In short, we shouldn't have to be talking about this because it never should have been in theaters. It's hardly any different from any other first episode in a Power Rangers season once they started changing the title every year. I mean, if they had to do it this way, why did they have to pick the dullest series? Why couldn't it have come a year earlier and been Zeo, a Power Rangers movie? Or a year later and it could have been Space, a Power Rangers movie. They could have slapped the first 3 or 4 episodes together, taken it to the screen, and either of those would have been more exciting than this. It wouldn't have been a good movie, but it would have been more bearable. Turbo uses a convoluted and tired plot about Divatox going after a wizard named Larigo who looks like a Furby because he has some sort of power she needs to marry the big lava monster. There's a lot of details I won't mention because, honestly, they just fill up space and aren't very important. This is Power Rangers. We know the Rangers are going to get there and stop the bad guy. We shouldn't have to watch 70 minutes of them trying to get there. The movie tries unsuccessfully to entertain us with things that have nothing to do with superheroes fighting supervillains. It's a movie, so it has to be more about the characters. No, it doesn't. Not if you don't know how to make us care about your characters and if they're all exactly the same. I don't care about a snake attacking Tommy and Catherine. I don't care about Catherine almost drowning in a waterfall. I don't care about Jason and Kimberly almost drowning in Divatox's submarine. And I certainly don't care about the same contrived physical humor with Bulk and Skull they've been doing for 4 years on the show. Yep, I had to see this in the theater. And while I hate to complain about things making no sense in a Power Rangers movie, I just don't think it's too much to ask, at least in the context of the situation set up in the movie. So Divatox needs 2 humans of purity and strength to sacrifice to Malagor, the lava monster. Her minions bring her Bulk and Skull. They, of course, don't fit the criteria, but that's not why Divatox scrambles their brains and throws them in her submarine dungeon. She just thinks they're stupid and ugly looking. So her minions try again. They find a couple of humans swimming around in diving suits, take them, and Divatox decides they're perfect before she even sees their faces. They just happen to be Jason and Kimberly, 2 former Power Rangers who came back to Angel Grove to help save a kid's shelter. Okay, so why are they out swimming? No explanation. And how does Divatox just happen to nab 4 people who all know each other, 2 of which are original Power Rangers? Okay, whatever, it's Power Rangers. I guess I have to expect these kinds of coincidences. The real head-scratcher is when Divatox throws her ugly henchman in the lava and calls him a sacrifice. He fits 0 of the criteria. He's not a human, and he's not a being of purity and strength. Unless purity means he's got to be a virgin, and I'm not even going there. And while we're on the subject, why are Jason and Kimberly in this movie? They don't get to do anything but try not to drown and get possessed by Malagor at the end. The movie really plays it up like having them here is really clever, like it validates the existence of the movie. No, don't leave the theater. We've got Jason and Kimberly. We've got star power. And then there's Justin, the little kid Power Ranger. I always thought this was a stupid idea. I'm sure this only happened to try and give kids someone they could relate to better. After all, the Rangers all look like they're in their 20s by now. So why not have a Ranger who's closer to the age of the kids watching the movie? Well, he's kind of the worst part. He only gets the job because he accidentally sees the Rangers morph, knows their identities, and he's a warm body at the right place at the right time. Zordon, as always, acts like it's his destiny to be a Ranger, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have mattered who was there right then. It could have been Ernie from the diner, or Bulk, or Skull. They give Justin a cookie-cutter backstory about his mom dying, and they make him a foster kid to try to make us feel bad for him, so we'll want him to be a Power Ranger. But this doesn't propel him into any kind of character arc. It's just an excuse to validate his presence, and it really doesn't work. And Zordon makes him a Ranger apart from the other 4, just for dramatic effect, so the others will be surprised when they find out they have to work with a 12-year-old. Tommy doesn't like it, and he says, "We'll talk about this later," which of course they never do. And since he's a kid, he periodically makes a stupid mistake that makes things harder for the team. I don't know why there always have to be at least 5 Rangers. Looks like they would have been fine this time with 4, or maybe even 1. I think Tommy could have managed this mission all by himself. I mean, that's all I've ever learned from these movies. The first one shows us that without Tommy, the team is nothing. And since he's still the leader and the longest-running Ranger, this is his 3rd color now, by the way, that theme still seems to be there. The way Rocky takes himself out of the movie to leave a slot for Justin is the biggest contrivance in the movie, and it's also unintentionally funny. He injures himself in a martial arts practice by spinning about a dozen feet in the air and onto the ground. Apparently he got injured because he was being too cocky, and I guess the lesson to be learned here is never be so arrogant that you defy the laws of physics. Oh, and whenever Justin morphs, he grows a couple extra feet and his muscles fill out, so he's the same size as the rest of the Rangers, but he keeps his prepubescent boy voice. Like that, there are some moments that are kind of fun on the level of farce, but it's awkward because you can never really tell when it's trying to be funny and when it's accidental. Divatox is a pretty generic and obnoxious villain, but as my friend Josh pointed out as we watched this together, she's not a good actress, but at least she's not bored with the role. She's over the top and having a good time, and we were glad to see that somebody was. The look on her face when she finds out her husband-to-be is this ugly lava monster is priceless. The blue top-heavy hench monster cracked me up every time he was on screen, mostly because it was fun to see the actor trying not to fall over. And there is one genuinely funny scene, at least if you've ever seen early Power Rangers, where Divatox calls up Rita Repulsa and asks her for advice on how to beat the Power Rangers, and all she can say is, "Run!" And I couldn't help but chuckle at the image of Lord Zed sleeping. Toward the beginning, Zordon has the line, "It has an evil energy about it," to which Adam responds, "I have a bad feeling about this." Oh, and there's a volcano with a face on it. Throwing all else aside, I would expect something that has the word movie in it to actually be a movie. I know, I'm really raising the bar here. Maybe my standards are just a little too high, but Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, isn't a movie. It's a bland, mostly unfunny, entirely unclever introduction for a season of the TV show. Besides all the other reasons I've stated, when your movie isn't actually a movie, you gotta get a 0 out of 4. So we've had Superman 4 and we've had Turbo, a Power Rangers movie the last 2 weeks. What do you think? A good movie for next time? A little breath of fresh air? All right, let's do Batman Begins. Ba, ba,